UTI. Now, UTI is an infection of the urinary system that leads to an inflammatory response, right? Now, UTI is said to be recurrent when it follows a complete clinical resolution of a previous UTI. So, if you have two UTI episodes in 6 months, and I talk about two UTI episodes, I mean culture proven UTI episodes in 6 months and uncomplicated UTI episodes. I'm going to tell you what it means to be uncomplicated later on, right? So, two uncomplicated UTI episodes are culture proven in 6 months, or three in a year is called recurrent UTI. Very important. Two in 6 months or three in 1 year, right? Now, UTI is very, very, very common. It's more common in women because women have short urethra, and other reasons I'm going to talk about you later. But at least 50% of women will suffer from one UTI in their lifetime, and 11% will have one every year, and 20 to 30% will have, with one episode, will have recurrent UTIs. It's so common, and prevalence increases with age, right? So that's why it's extremely important to know how to treat these conditions, right? Before I go there, I will tell you some definitions. These definitions are very, very, very important because based on these definitions, we define what we're treating, and that will help us understand how to treat it correctly, right? So, when you have UTI, you have to divide based on location, right? Is it cystitis, meaning bladder, lower urinary tract, or is it pyelonephritis, that's upper tract? Remember that if you gynacs only treat cystitis, they don't treat pyelonephritis. And how to differentiate between the two? It is fever. Cystitis, there will be no fever. Pyelonephritis, there will be fever. So please understand, any systemic malaise, right, fever, etc., it's pyelonephritis that has to be referred. But acute bacterial cystitis, right, is what gynacs treat. So that is very important to understand, right? So please understand what it is. Then yes, urosepsis can occur from either. It's basically a life-threatening organ dysfunction which is caused by dysregulated host response, right? Now, patient spectrum, right? You can have asymptomatic or symptomatic. Now, very, very important point here. One important take-home message. Never ever treat asymptomatic bacteriuria unless the woman is pregnant or you have done surgery where the mucosal lining of the urinary tract is being involved. Correct? Never treat asymptomatic bacteriuria unless pregnancy or there is a surgery of the kidneys involving the mucosa. Now, because unfortunately people tend to treat reports. Please never do that. Right? Why? Because asymptomatic bacteriuria, no symptoms where bacteria present, could be a colonization state. Remember, the urinary tract is not actually sterile. Blood is not really sterile. Urine never sterile. Now there is a whole urinary microbiome, theory coming out, right? So remember that bacteria can be a present, which is asymptomatic, could be a colonizing state. If you treat it, in fact, you will damage good bacteria, and that will get replaced by bad bacteria. So never treat asymptomatic bacteria. Big important take-home message, except in pregnancy for gynacs, right? Now, what is asymptomatic bacteriuria? Presence of at least 10 is to 5 colony forming units of the same uropathogens in two consecutive clean catch midstream urine samples without symptoms and signs, right? So you've done two consecutive clean catch midstream samples and you have found the same uropathogen of at least 10 is to 5 colony forming units per ml, and there are no symptom signs. That's called as asymptomatic bacteriuria, right? And symptomatic. Symptomatic is what you treat, right? Symptomatic meaning you have signs and symptoms, and then you will have bacteria. When you do urine routine, you will get pus cells more than equal 10 WBCs per high power field, and bacteriuria, right? You will see bacteria more than equal 10 is to 5 colony forming units per ml. Now, I'm going to go ahead and talk about exactly the amount you should look for in my diagnostics. But for now, what you understand is that symptomatic is what you treat. There are symptoms, and there are pus cells, and there are bacteria. Pus cells are very, very important, right? Then based on severity, you can have uncomplicated or complicated, right? Now, what is uncomplicated? Now, extremely important to understand that gynacs only treat uncomplicated cystitis. So, uncomplicated infection of the bladder. Now, uncomplicated would mean it's symptomatic, but there is no cause found. You have found no anatomical or functional damage of the urinary tract. But a lab test show UTI. That's what you treat. Complicated, you do not treat unless it's pregnancy. So pregnancy is that one thing where it's complicated. When you have infection, pregnancy is called complicated. Gynacs treat it, right? ASB, asymptomatic bacterial pregnancy, you treat it. That's the only misnomer. Otherwise, you always treat uncomplicated and symptomatic. Correct? What is complicated? Complicated would be there is some functional or anatomical problem of the urinary tract. What are they? You could be having some instrumentation done before, or there is voiding dysfunction, right? Very important to understand that. So any woman who comes to you with UTI, Please ask them questions about, are they avoiding correctly? Is there hesitancy? Is there interrupted flow? Is there thin flow? Is she straining to pee? Is she having sensation of incomplete bladder emptying? She may be having high post-void residual, and that may become a culture medium. So always ask the UTI patient whether she's got voiding dysfunction, and if she's got it, refer, because that becomes complicated. Any stone in the urinary tract, right? Urethriasis, right? Calculi. Then any obstruction, right? Very important. That is again complicated. Any systemic disease, sorry, renal insufficiency, diabetes. So diabetes, when a woman has UTI repeatedly recurrent, please look for diabetes. That India is a diabetes country, capital of the world. So that may be a sign, the first sign of diabetes, right? So renal insufficiency, diabetes, immunodeficiency, organ transplantation, or pregnancy. Pregnancy is also complicated, but that's one complicated thing, gynecology. So very important to understand these definitions. Location cystitis, pyelonephritis, right? Asymptomatic, symptomatic, and uncomplicated and complicated. Very important. Now, when you talk about recurrent UTI, a recurrent UTI could be a relapse or it could be reinfection, right? Now, what is a relapse? Relapse is you got a symptomatic recurrent UTI episode and you treat it, you give adequate treatment, but the symptoms recur, right? And the same organism is found within 2 weeks. That's relapse. You've treated it, yet the symptoms are there, and the same bacteria, right? Reinfection is you had an episode of UTI in a patient of recurrent UTI, then you treated it correctly, and then there was a negative intervening urine culture, correct? So in between, you got a urine culture that became negative. Yet after that, there's another episode with the same or another uropathogen. That would be reinfection. So relapse would be same organism, reinfection would be same or different organism, right? Reinfection, you have an intervening negative culture report. That is reinfection. Relapse could be the same organism is persisting, not treated, right? Even though you've given proper treatment. Most recurrent UTI episodes are actually a reinfection of the same organism. Remember that. There's a whole theory around it. Now they say that the bacteria, when they enter the bladder, they enter the urothelial cells and they will form a biofilm there. And afterwards they will rupture, right? So when you treat it, the bacteria in the urine gets treated, but the bacteria inside the cells may remain. And after some time the cells will rupture and then that will go and reinfect other cells and urothelial cells and you'll have a reinfection, right? So that is why recurrent UTI episodes are most likely reinfection of the same organism. Now, so as I said, gynecology acute uncomplicated cystitis is confined to the bladder. It is acute, that is sporadic or recurrent cystitis, limited to the non-pregnant women with no known anatomical and functional abnormalities within urinary tract or comorbidities, right? So that is acute uncomplicated cystitis. And so these patients will not have fever, they will not have other symptoms of systemic illness like chills and rigors, significant fatigue or malaise beyond baseline. There will be no flank pain, there will be no costovertebral angle tenderness. If any of these things are there, think of pyelonephritis and refer, right? Now, organisms. The organisms are the same. E. coli is the most common one, but you can also get Proteus mirabilis, Klebsiella enterobacter, Enterococcus, Staph saprophyticus. Now, Staph saprophyticus is very important from a diagnostic perspective. I will tell you later on when I come to diagnostics. But remember, it's most commonly E. coli and Enterobacteriaceae, right? Now, how does it happen, right? All of us know that the vagina has good bacteria. Sometimes they get replaced with bad bacteria, right? Maybe because you are a menopausal woman, there is no estrogen, so then there's no good environment for good bacteria to grow. So you have bad bacteria coming there, and what happens is that female urethra is very short, so there's ascending colonization from fecal flora. So from the gut, from the fecal flora, it comes to the vagina, colonizes the vagina, and then it can ascend into the bladder from the urethra, right? Very important because women have very short urethra. And there's some women can have genetic predisposition, and there's some blood group antigens that are responsible for recurrent UTIs. Right? Now, what are the risk factors? In young women, premenopausal women, sexual intercourse, right? So if you have sexual intercourse linked recurrent UTI is very, very common, is the most common predictor of biggest risk factor for recurrent UTI. Now, in that, it is not the husband's bacteria, it's the woman's bacteria in the vagina that gets pushed in by thrusting, right, into the bladder. But also new partners, use of spermicide, that doesn't happen in India, but it's one of the risk factors. Diaphragm use, history of UTI, right? If you have a previous history of UTI, you are more likely to get recurrent UTI. If you have earlier in childhood, you have more likelihood of getting, recurrent UTI, right? Now, postmenopausal women. The three important things are, of all the risk factors, the three most important are, one is estrogen deficiency, extremely important. Menopausal women, right? If they have no hormone, then the environment is poor. The pH becomes, doesn't remain acidic, and then there is, there is a bacteria that grows, right? Cystocele, right? When you have prolapse, what can happen is that you can have cystocele. Cystocele can lead to high PVR, and that high PVR can become a culture medium, right? Incontinence is one very important. Every woman who has got UTI, please ask for incontinence, right? Urogenital surgery, high post-hoc residual, previous UTI, again, any depletion of the vaginal lactobacilli, increase in vaginal E. coli, right? Compared with premenopausal women, right? Depletion of that lactobacilli happens when you don't have estrogen, right, in the body. And any elderly women who are in institutions, right, they can be having a functional status deterioration. They don't go to pee often enough, or they are catheterized, and that can become a culture, like risk factor for recurrent UTI. Now, what are the symptoms? So I told you pyelonephritis is fever, very important. Chills, flank pain, vomiting. Those are all systemic conditions. Pyelonephritis. In bladder, that is cystitis, you will have dysuria, like burning while passing urine, right? They will have frequency and or urgency, right? And they will have suprapubic pain and hematuria. But the last two are less common. Now, one thing I want to mention here, I get too many patients of bladder pain syndrome who are misdiagnosed with UTI. So if you get patients who are complaining on pain on full bladder, which is relieved a little by peeing, or they have constant feeling of discomfort in the lower pelvic area, and they have constant urgency, when they have like the constant situation of urgency, right? Then please understand, sometimes these women may not be UTI, they may be bladder pain syndrome. So please rule out other conditions in women with recurrent UTI. Oftentimes, bladder wall inflammation, which is bladder pain syndrome, stroke, interstitial cystitis can get misdiagnosed as UTI. Just because you have a patient coming to you with dysuria, frequency, urgency, don't take quickly a history and then consider it UTI. Please always, look at the urinary report, look at the culture report, look at the symptoms correctly. Is it constant urgency, or is it urgency only during the episode of UTI? The episode, right? Is it burning that is there while peeing, or is it burning that's like, that discomfort that's there constantly, or just before when the fish that is full bladder relieved by peeing, right? So please understand that you may be misdiagnosing a bladder pain syndrome as recurrent UTI. I get a lot of patients like that, right? Because many times what happens is, that when you do midstream sample, that can get contaminated. Sometimes a woman who does not have bacteria can show bacteria in the report. Why? Because when you're, especially in obese women, when you're peeing, the women are obese, right? So the vaginal, when the urine is being passed, right? When you're collecting a midstream sample, that the urine can pass to the vagina and you can have congenital contamination. And that bacteria may show and you're thinking is UTI, right? So please understand, always be careful before saying, okay, this woman is a woman of recurrent UTI, right? So now when you're assessing history, right, all the things I told you about before has to be assessed in history, right? Age of first UTI, right? Now, every time a woman comes to me, very importantly, right, my first visit for recurrent UTI 1.5 hours. Why? Because I'm going through every UTI episode to really understand, was it really UTI or something else being called as UTI? So look at all the previous reports. Please understand the symptoms and signs in each episode. Understand whether routine macroscopic culture was done. Look at those reports. Classify it correctly as UTI episode, or was it misdiagnosed? Please look at every episode before calling it recurrent UTI, right? Because I get too many women who have been labeled as recurrent UTI. They think they're recurrent UTI. They come to me, and then I find actually not recurrent UTI, something else going on. Do not assume it's recurrent UTI just because woman is telling you I have repeated episodes two times every 6 months, three in a year, and it's been happening since some time, and then you keep on treating it as UTI, right? Please be careful. Look at every episode before. Look at whether there's low upper urinary tract symptoms. Look for continence. Ask for sexual and contraceptive history. Any new partner, right? Is it sexual activity linked in the UTI? Past medical history, diabetes, neurological disease, any stone, previous surgery, any instrumentation, any medication. Please ask proper history, right? Because you want to rule out complicated. Now, always do proper examination, right? General examination. And one more very important thing: many UTI patients are not examined. Never do that. When they go to urologist, sometimes they don't do gynec examination. They don't do urogyne examination, right? And I get too many patients who have got prolapse or missed because what happens is that they are in retention because or they have got high post-flight residual because of the fact that they have got prolapse and the prolapse schemes the urethra. They got a urologist who are not examining. They're not picking up the prolapse and they be treated as recurrent UTI. Please be careful and examine a woman correctly, right? General examination, look for renal size and postovertebral angle tenderness, renal tenderness, thorough urogyne examination, look for post-void residual, look for bladder tenderness, is there any prolapse, look for vaginal atrophy. Many times what happens is when you have vaginal atrophy, women can get menopausal cystitis. Why? Because when you have atrophy and urine, when she's peeing, that is the atrophied mucosa, it can burn, right? And then she will tell you that, oh, I have this burning when I pass urine, right? And that can be because of menopausal cystitis. So please rule out that, examine. And also rule out vaginitis, right? And urethritis, very important. Rule out all of this. Rule out bladder pain syndrome. Right? And please be careful before calling it recurrent UTI. Right now, when I'm getting a patient for examination, right? Now, when a woman comes to me first time, right? First time, no episode of UTI before, right? And I have ruled out vaginal discharge of pruritus, then our dipstick alone is okay. But when she comes to me with atypical symptoms, right? Even the first time when she's coming to me, as atypical symptoms. What are atypical symptoms? New or worsening urgency, urinary urgency, new incontinence, or gross hematuria, correct? Right? Or in recurrent UTI episodes, always do urine routine macroscopy and culture. Never treat without that. Because in the definition of recurrent UTI already it is culture proven UTI. Please always do it, right? Only the first episode on a young girl who has no atypical symptoms, you can do dipstick. Otherwise, every woman, even if she comes first time with atypical symptoms or recurrent UTI episodes, always do urine routine macroscopy and culture. Now, when I'm looking at urine routine macroscopy, what do I look for? Very, very important. Look for pus cells, nitrite, and leukocyte esterase. Always do it. Many labs do not do nitrite and leukocyte esterase. Not correct. Please insist that the labs do it, right? So why do we do pus cells? Because pus cells are sensitive, 80-95% sensitive, right? So pus sensitive meaning they will pick up all cases of UTI, but there are a lot of false positives because pus cells can happen in other conditions also, correct? So they're not specific. Pus cells are not specific, right? It's not specifically for UTI because there are other conditions which can cause pus cells, but they're highly sensitive. They pick up all conditions with all women with UTI will get picked up when you have pus cells. And pus cells are how many? 10 per high power field, more than 10 per high power field. Now, when you have, many labs do, see, labs can do unspun urine or spun urine. If they use spun urine, which is spun, like they spin the urine after collection. If you have spinning the urine after collection, then you only need 2 cells per high power field. If you're not spinning the urine, it's unspun urine, then you should look for more than 10. But most labs in the country, so without fail, most labs only do unspun. So in all your reports, please look for pus cells more than equal to 10 per high power field. Very important. Next important is nitrite. Now, what is nitrite? Right? Now, all organisms causing UTI except Staph saprophyticus. I told you, right? Staph saprophyticus is one important thing. All Enterobacteriaceae except Staph saprophyticus convert nitrate in the urine to nitrite. So when you have infection with Enterobacteriaceae except Staph saprophyticus, you will get nitrite positive. So if nitrite is present, it's always UTI. It's highly specific for UTI. However, it's not sensitive because if it's negative, it could still be Staph saprophyticus. Remember that, right? So it's positive, it's highly specific, it's really UTI. Every woman with positive nitrite is UTI. If it's negative, it does not mean that she does not have UTI because it could be Staph saprophyticus. Otherwise, but last one is leukocyte esterase. Leukocyte esterase is, what is it? Leukocyte esterase, when your WBCs are broken down, you get leukocyte esterase in the urine. It's highly sensitive because every woman who got UTI will break down the WBCs and you will get leukocyte esterase. It's highly sensitive. It will pick up every case of UTI. However, it's not very specific because there are other conditions which can have leukocyte esterase positive, right? So it's highly sensitive or not specific. Whereas nitrite is highly specific, not sensitive. So I will look at all three: pus cells, nitrite, and leukocyte esterase. Right? And then microscopy is very important, right? In your gold standard for recurrent UTI is urine microscopy and midstream urine culture. Correct? Now, how do I diagnose UTI? Right? They would say earlier more than 10 to 5 coliforming units. European guidelines say 10:3 coliforming units in symptomatic women, but now they say more than 10:2. Okay? In a symptomatic woman who's got more than 10:2 is enough. Symptoms present, pustules present, and the 10 is more than 10:2, very important. Okay, it can be looked at. Now, very important thing, how to collect the urine is very, very important because many times midstream people don't do it correctly, right? You have to ensure that your labia is separated, is cleaned properly, and then you're passing, you're only collecting the midstream, middle part of the urine. In older women, if they're recurrent UTI, tend to put in a K90, a catheter, and get the urine out. Why? Because sometimes you cannot get uncontaminated urine because sometimes the vaginal contamination happens. I like to take a urine, directly from the bladder in such women because then I don't want contamination. Also, when you collect urine, please ensure it's tested within the first 2 hours. You should plate it within the first 2 hours, otherwise it can go wrong. Either you plate it within the first 2 hours or you immediately after collection you refrigerate and test within the first 24 hours. A lot of times people do it very incorrectly. They will say, okay, lab, please come home and collect, and then they will go, it will take hours to reach the main lab, so that we can lead to wrong reports. So understand how you're collecting. Now, if I've got a recurrent UTI case, right? I have seen all her previous episodes and I've classified it correctly as recurrent UTI. Then what do I do, right? Now, in such patients, what will I do? I have got a patient coming to me. I have diagnosed a recurrent UTI. Right now, she's got one acute episode happening towards me. I will treat it, right? So you treat that acute episode, right? Then I have to treat her for the to prevent the recurrent UTI episode. So what do I do? Correct? I treat it. If she is asymptomatic after treatment, then I don't need to do culture again. I can start the prophylactic treatment. Understood? So what do I do? A woman comes to me. She's got, I have diagnosed correctly recurrent UTI, acute uncomplicated cystitis. Complicated I've referred, right, except pregnancy. Now, I have got an acute episode. I will treat the acute episode properly. Okay? Then what I will do, and by the way, it's very important to understand that acute episode dose is very different from prophylactic dose. Some people, some doctors are giving, I have seen, when women are referred to me, they're getting the same dose for 1 month from the time of acute episode. Never do that. Treat the acute episode properly. I will give the dosage for that, right? And the medication for that. Treat the acute episode, then look for symptoms, right? You've treated it. If she's asymptomatic, she does not require urinary microscopy culture to be repeated. You can start the prophylactic medication. But if the woman is symptomatic, even after your acute episode treatment, then please do urinary microscopy culture 2 weeks later because you want to look for bacterial persistence, or maybe it's not even UTI. Okay? So please understand that. Asymptomatic, after acute treatment, you don't have to repeat culture. You can start the prophylactic medication. If symptomatic, you repeat the urinary microscopy culture. Always, again, I'm telling you, never treat asymptomatic bacteriuria. It's very common in elderly. Never treat it. Now, what are the investigation you do? Right? If it's uncomplicated recurrent, there are no real guidelines. But when you do cystoscopy, it's given here, right? Any complicated recurrent UTI, also if there is renal calculi, outflow obstruction, bladder pain syndrome you're suspecting, or a cancer case you're suspecting, right? Or you may even want to do it in tuberculosis, right? Because if there's sterile pyuria. In India, you want to look out for tuberculosis, right? Because if sterile pyuria, I mean they have pus cells, but there is no bacteria, and then repeatedly it's happening. You're getting pus cells, but there is no bacteria, then you call for tuberculosis, and you may need cystoscopy in such a patient, right? Or a woman has persistent hematuria, chronic pelvic pain, lumbar colic pain, weight loss, right? Cancer, right? All of this you should do cystoscopy. Now, when do you do CT scan, right? Or XTD urography? If the symptoms are atypical, right? If they're not responding to appropriate antimicrobial therapy, or they remain febrile after 72 hours of treatment, then you may do ultrasound KUB or a CT scan. Very important, right? So atypical symptoms, remaining febrile after 72 hours, if it's a pyelonephritis, gone to a specialist and they will do CT scan or XTD urography. Or you've given treatment and not responding, right? Again, look for complicated UTI. Always look out, right? Ask for voiding, ask for diabetes, ask for continence. Any other symptom other than complicating UTI, refer it to a specialist. Now, how do you manage? I told you already, right? So you have recurrent UTI history, symptomatic patient, you will do urinary culture, urinary microscopy culture, not this urine culture. Then if it's a positive, you will treat it. You will treat it like an acute, you will treat that one acute episode like any other acute episode, right? And once you've treated it, you will do urine culture if the symptoms persist. If the symptoms are not persisting, don't need culture, you will do prophylaxis, right? Now, if the symptoms are persisting, you will do urinary maxillin culture. If it's positive, you treat it. If it's negative, then you will again give prophylaxis. Remember that. Okay, this is the chart of how you treat it. Now, now this is a chart for treatment of acute episode. This is very different from prophylactic, right? Now, how to treat acute episode of UTI, right? There are two drugs which are very good: fosfomycin and nitrofurantoin. I used to use penicillin in the United States, but that's not available in India, right? So, fosfomycin 3 gram single dose, right? Acute episode, you have to only give one single dose of fosfomycin, fosirol 3 gram, one sachet in half glass of water at night on empty stomach. Very important. Empty stomach. 2 hours after the last meal. After emptying bladder, right? So you have to empty your bladder and then take fosfomycin in half glass of water, one sachet, 3 grams, one dose. Or you can give nitrofurantoin. You should always give the macro crystal because long lasting, right? Your half life is higher. You give 100 milligram BD twice a day for 5 to 7 days. Remember that, right? Penicillin is another wonderful drug. I hope it comes to India. It's not available here. It's 400 milligrams twice a day for 3 days. Now, one very important take home message: stop giving quinolones. Please do not give norfloxacin, ofloxacin ever, because quinolones have very high resistance patterns in India, right? We should never give norflox. There are more bladder-specific drugs like nitrofurantoin and fosfomycin. Keep norflox for what is needed, right? Also, ofloxacin is second-line treatment for tuberculosis. So never use it for UTI because we are adding to the antibiotic resistance patterns. India has the highest antibiotic resistance patterns in the world for quinolones. So please not give not. Big important take-home message. Again, Bactrim, right? We have this trimethoprim sulfamethoxazole, right? Very important to understand one very important thing about Bactrim. If your what they have said is this: if the E. coli resistance patterns to trimethoprim sulfamethoxazole is less than 20%, only then give it. Meaning, if in a country, in a population, the resistance patterns of E. coli to Bactrim is less than 20%, only then will you give it. India has high resistance to trimethoprim sulfamethoxazole. Please do not give it unless you other drugs are not working. Because in an area with high resistance patterns to trimethoprim sulfamethoxazole, it is not work or only adds to the resistance patterns. Remember this. Local resistance patterns are very important while you're giving trimethoprim sulfamethoxazole. Now, then what do you do, right? I have treated the acute episode. I have told you what drugs to give. Then I have looked for symptoms. If symptoms are resolved, I can give prophylaxis. If symptoms are not resolved, I will do culture again and treat it again. Okay, if it's positive, right? Now I have treated it. It's negative, right? I have once if it's symptomatic again, I have again done urinary macroscopy culture, treated it, and now she's come to a point where she is negative, and you proved it's UTI, it's not bladder pain syndrome, it's not anything else. Now you will do a lot of prophylactic, treatment to prevent UTI, because these women should not be repeatedly treated like another acute episode. Please treat it like you have to give prophylaxis to prevent it happening again. My recurrent UTI patients, it's a 1.5 hours consultation because so much to look through, right? Never quickly give a medication, send them off, right? Because that's when they will keep on coming back to you. Now, one thing important is lifestyle modification. Now, lifestyle modification has not shown to have any evidence backing it. Yet, does not harm us. So, we should do all these lifestyle modifications. What is this? After sexual activity, always empty the bladder, right? Pee every 3 hours. A lot of times there are delayed voiding patterns in India, even in doctors, because we don't have good toilets. Women do not pee for hours on end, and then they can retain urine that will become culture medium. So always pee every 3 hours. When you wipe, always wipe from front to back and not from back to front, because then the gut bacteria can come in the vagina. No douching, no V washes, because when you use all those washes, then they can change the acid-base balance of the vagina. So never use V washes. Do not use hot tubs. Do not use bubble baths. If it's high BMI, weight loss is important. No tight clothing. No, when the women are using the jet when washing, don't use a jet. It can push the bacteria inside, right? You should always use cotton clothes, right? Cotton underwear, no tight clothing, reduce bicycle riding, right? Always ensure you're drinking enough quantity of water. Do not drink too much. You don't need more than 2.5 to 3 liters, but never drink. You can drink 5-6 liters. Don't need that much. 2.5 liters is good. But do not drink less also, because that can become a bladder irritant, right? Don't drink less than 5 glasses liquids a day. right? So all of this you should, because if you drink less, what happens is that urine becomes concentrated and that can irritate the bladder, right? So do not drink less than 5 glasses. You don't generally need more than 2.5, right? Now, once I've treated the acute episode and the woman is asymptomatic, then I can start prophylaxis. What is prophylaxis? Prophylaxis is a long-term treatment with a lower dose of the same drugs, right? Lower dose of the same drugs. Why do I give lower dose? Because that will prevent the dormant bacteria from coming back and causing reinfection. We spoke about the fact that women have bacteria that are stored in the urothelial cells, like they form a biofilm, right? So you want to give prophylactic medication to prevent that bacteria from coming up and causing reinfection. So you give it for 3 to 6 months, right? So when you give it 3 to 6 months, what are the drugs you give, right? So the drugs you can give is phosphomycin 3 gram every 10 days. Very importantly, 3 gram phosphomycin every 10 days. You can give nitrofurantoin. I like nitrofurantoin. Normally, I like phosphomycin for my acute treatment. I like nitrofurantoin for my long-term treatment, right? So nitrofurantoin will be 100 milligram daily for 3 to 6 months. You can also give nitrofurantoin 50 milligram daily, but I like nitrofurantoin 100 milligram. You can give cephaloxacin 125 milligram or 250 milligram. You can give Norflox. But as I told you, Norflox, ciprofloxacin, and ofloxacin are all for me second line. I never give it unless required. Again, the same thing with trimethoprim. See, high recurrence rates observed with trimethoprim, use with trimethoprim resistance. If you give trimethoprim as prophylaxis in areas where there is higher resistance to trimethoprim, it can lead to even higher resistance patterns. So recurrence rates. So remember that. So if you give, India has very high resistance to trimethoprim. So please be careful. If you give trimethoprim as prophylaxis, it can cause recurrence even more. So norfloxacin 100 milligram daily for 3 to 6 months, or phosphomycin 3 gram every 10 days for 3 to 6 months is a good treatment to give as prophylaxis. When you give nitrofurantoin for more than 6 months, always do liver function test and look out for pneumonitis, right? Because if you give it for high longer than 6 months. But I can also give post-coital prophylaxis. I told you sexual intercourse is a very common risk factor, a most important risk factor for recurrent UTI in younger women. If you find that every UTI episode occurs along with sexual intercourse, then what will I give? Post-coital prophylaxis. It is as good and as effective as low-dose continuous antibiotic prophylaxis. So what do I give? I will give one dose of nitrofurantoin, 100 milligram, immediately after sexual intercourse. That's all she needs. Sexual activity, she'll go and void and take a dose of nitrofurantoin. And Cochrane report clearly shows it's equally effective. Correct? Now, any menopausal women always give local estrogen cream. Very, 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 very important. Right? Always give local estrogen cream. Why do we give local estrogen cream? Because in older women, I told you, because when they become menopausal, then they can always have a condition where the good bacteria gets replaced by bad bacteria. Right? When it gets replaced by bad bacteria, what can happen? There can come into the vagina. So they can have colonization of vagina with, right, bad bacteria, because estrogen helps the colonization with lactobacilli. If there's no estrogen, there's no lactobacilli. But always give local estrogen. It doesn't work for oral estrogen. So when you and what happens with menopause is your vaginal pH also goes bad. So always give local estrogen cream in older women. And generally, how do you give? You give locally every day at night for 2 to 3 weeks. Normally, I give 3 weeks, followed by twice a week for 8 months to life. Actually, in menopausal women, right? That is what we give, right? Local estrogen cream, not oral. Cranberry, right? Now, cranberry has been found. Now, there is some evidence that shows that cranberry, not very great evidence, but there is some evidence that shows that if you give, it's a retrospective review. It showed that if you use it prophylactically in young and middle-aged women, it may be beneficial, but the evidence is controversial in other age groups, right? Cranberry. And how does cranberry act? It acts by preventing the adherence of the uropathogens to uroepithelial cells. Remember that, right? So, cranberry acts by preventing the adherence of the uropathogens to uroepithelial cells. Okay, so now one very important thing is that another meta-analysis also found a number of UTI episodes halved by giving cranberry. So this is one evidence, right? But Cochrane review found that there is no benefit. So when you have these women with recurrent UTI episode, it might just be helpful to give Tracfi along with your antibiotic therapy. Now, vitamin C, right? Now, vitamin C is, how does it work? Vitamin C does not work by acidification of urine. It works because what it does is it reduces the nitrites to reactive nitrogen oxides, which has a bacteriostatic effect in the urine. Okay, so vitamin C evidence is poor, right? But the way it acts is nitrites are converted into reactive nitrogen oxides, which has got a bactericidal effect in the urine. Okay, methanamine salts, I'm not going to cover this much. It's not available in India, but I used to use it in the United States. I hope it comes to India. In acidic urine, what methanamine does is it gets hydrolyzed to ammonia and formaldehyde, which is bactericidal, right? And it's good. It doesn't have much side effects, very mild adverse effects like GI upset, rashes, etc. You should not give it in neuropathic bladder or if they have any urinary tract abnormalities. Otherwise, methanamine is a good one. Lastly, D-mannose, right? So D-mannose is very good because what it does is, again, it's another way of the action of D-mannose similar to cranberry. What it does is it prevents the bacterial adherence to urothelial cells, right? Now, and there's an RCT that is done where in one RCT, what was shown is that it had a good effect as opposed to even placebo and even nitrofurantoin, right? So when D-mannose was given, the number of recurrent UTI episodes was reduced, right? Only 15% of times they got it. 50% of women got recurrent UTI episodes, as compared to 60% of women in the placebo group, and nitrofurantoin 20% of women got it, right? There were three groups, three-arm RCT, randomized controlled trial, right? And they found that D-mannose reduced it, and only 15% of women in the D-mannose group got UTI, as opposed to 60% placebo and nitrofurantoin 20%. So D-mannose works by preventing bacterial adherence. Now, this is how both work, right? Cranberry and D-mannose. So, you have the fimbriae, right? Fimbriae on the bacterial wall, right? And so what happens is that cranberry prevents fimbriae from attaching to the urothelial cell. And D-mannose works by preventing type 1 fimbriae from attaching to the urothelial cells. That's why many companies have come out with combination products, right? So they have cranberry with D-mannose, like Zydus has tract-free. Now, Zydus also come out, I think, with cranberry, D-mannose, and potassium magnesium citrate liquid formulation, because when you alkalize the urine, it helps, right? It's got a little bit of reduces irritation, right? So they've come out with tract-free KM, right? So all of these products help you with a little bit of symptomatic relief also, right? But you have to give prophylactic antibiotics also, right? So along with prophylactic medication, you can also give these products which kind of in an acute episode you can give tract-free KM. You also got a little bit of potassium magnesium citrate. So what it does is that it prevents, like it helps a little bit of symptom resolution, because when the urine is alkalized, it reduces the symptoms, right? Now, other things are, these are all possibilities for the future. Suppositories of lactobacilli, vaccines of lactobacilli, but they are not yet come to the market. Now, what I really want to talk about to you is this, right? Take home. I have got last 2-3 minutes. I want to tell you this, right? Very importantly, remember that we doctors are contributing to the antibiotic resistance patterns in the country, and we are coming to a stage that no antibiotic will work in most of our organisms. We're getting too many patients who are UTI resistant to everything, right? Firstly, they've been mismanaged, right? Or their vaginal samples the urine samples are contaminated with vaginal bacteria, and that's why it's looking all resistance. But I'm getting pure bacteria UTI where it's bacteria from the bladder but resistant to everything. So please be careful about not giving norfloxacin, right? Phosphomycin and norfloxacin are very nitrofurantoin are good because they have low resistance patterns, and the lowest is phosphomycin, right? Very low resistance pattern, high action, right? Susceptibility is very high, right? And the good thing, and look at this. This is one important take-home message for me, right? Look at this. Quinolone resistant pattern. India has the highest resistance to quinolone. Look at this, 81%. Can't be worse than this. We doctors have made this happen, because I'm getting too many patients. Urinary macroscopic culture is not done. Norflox has been given, right? And we are misdiagnosing it. Please be very careful. Use of bladder specific medication. I've already told you what they are, right? Something like phosphomycin works very well and has got no resistance pattern because it's got dual action. It prevents the cell wall synthesis. Also, what it does is it right removes fimbriae from the bacteria, right, and also reduces biofilm formation. I told you the bacteria comes into the urothelial cell and forms a biofilm. It reduces biofilm formation, it removes fimbriae, and also prevents cell wall synthesis of the bacteria. So what happens is that it has dual action, and that's why it's got lower resistance patterns. That's why you should use. Also, when you give phosphomycin, after you pee in the night, immediately it has a very high dose in the urine after you take it. In the first 2 to 4 hours, it's very high dose in the urine, right? And you only need like this red line you see, you need a phosphomycin level to rise only above that to cause it to have a bactericidal effect. So very important to understand that phosphomycin one dose, that's how it works, because you give one dose within the first 2 to 4 hours, very high dose in the bladder, and it kills the bacteria, and that's why one dose works.